I'm going to go ahead and get and slideshow. Is everybody seeing my screen? Okay, I saw a thumbs up. So we want to welcome everyone to Environmental Fridays. It is personal. This is the last episode for this semester, the last one for this semester. However, we do have our schedule for next semester starting in January 12th to be exact. It's already online. That link below will get you there to the schedule and to the speakers with bios attached. Or you could use the QR code to the right to get to our schedule for next semester, starting in January 2024. In fact, we start on January 12th. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. For this entire semester, I've had us reflect a bit on this iconic photograph that's called Earthrise. It was taken by an Apollo 8 astronaut. In the foreground is the moon, the surface of the moon. In the background is our planet, our blue planet. This photograph is credited for spurring on a number of different environmental movements, including the observance of Earth Day. If you want to learn some more and hear the video, see the video of an interview with the photographer, the astronaut, you can view it at this QR code. You could use the QR code to get to that YouTube video. Hopefully this picture of Earth engenders positive feelings for Earth, feelings of us needing to be caretakers of our planet. It is our only home, and so we need to take care of it. So that's one of the things we've tried to focus on and sort of meditate on for each episode this season. Today, it is my privilege to have one of my past students. She did a really good research project with me, very excited with her project. But she's a biology major, actually a graduate here from Andrews University. Some of her research, which actually is connected to what we'll hear today, dealt with marine mammals sightings in the Bay Islands of Honduras. She currently is in the area working and volunteering at Andrews University Museum of Nature and Science, and she is the lead on what is called a refillery. In fact, I'll pause here a bit to have Gloria, my co-host, tell us briefly, what is this refillery all about? Gloria?
All right, it is an honor to be here today. So refiller is it's pretty straightforward as the name tells you. We're trying to reduce the plastic waste by letting people reuse their shampoo bottles, soap bottles, but instead of buying a new bottles in the store, just refueling what they already have. It's really, I tried to start this last year with my biology club friends so that we can make our campus a little bit more environmentally friendly. So that's that. And we have other items to help other people lower their waste amount. Like I think it's hard to just clearly get all of them gone, but trying to do our best, doing our best with what we already have. that's our purpose for the refuelery. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, so what I plan to do, I'm just telling you now for the first time, next year, we'll give you more opportunity to give us some progress updates. So you'll have much longer time to tell us about the refinery.
Oh,
So thank
awesome.
you. Good, good. Thanks for being a co-host with me today.
Thank you.
Next, we would like to welcome a special feature speaker, Dr. Lisa Sorensen. She is the executive director for Birds Caribbean, and she will tell us all about it. And she also would be another person who, even, we are going to get some sort of an introductory summary, really, 5 to 7 minutes or so. I will and have already invited her to be part of our Environmental Fridays in upcoming season, so she could spend a lot more time with us telling us about Birds Caribbean. But today she will give us an introduction, a peek into what Birds Today is doing. Lisa? Unmute.
Thanks.
Go ahead and unmute, yes.
All right. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet this morning. Just a brief intro to Birds Caribbean, because as Desmond says, I look forward to being invited back at some point in the future to tell you more about our organization, our work. I would say for now, maybe could I share my screen and just show a couple slides?
I will stop sharing mine and you can go ahead and share yours. Yep.
Great.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, then I think I need to do presenter view. Hold on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want to do full screen?
Let's see if this works. Uh-oh.
We've seen the slides, but not full screen yet.
Okay, sorry. What just happened?
Not
Can you
problem. Not a problem.
hold on 1 second?
Yeah. Looks like some pretty pictures.
Yeah, just having a little issue with, hold on 1 second.
No problem.
I think it's just not cooperating. It's weird. There's somebody else that has a presentation too, in addition to me, like a short one.
Not
Could they go first?
not a short one. If you, if you like, we could, you could go ahead. We'll just be seeing your upcoming slides too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a major problem.
It's just spinning for some reason, and I can't.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I might be able to fix this.
Okay. We are used to this sort of thing. Technology doesn't always work the way we want it to, when we want it to. Yeah.
Just quit out of a couple other programs. Maybe that'll help. I don't see. Yeah, I can't get my cursor to move.
Can you move forward and stuff like that?
No, it's like frozen.
Or the whole thing is frozen?
The whole
Oh,
thing is frozen. I'm so sorry. well, I can just talk for a minute. Let's just forget the
Okay.
slides. I did have a few very pretty slides to show you.
Yeah, those are.
But let me see if I can stop sharing. See, I can't even get it to stop sharing.
Huh.
Yeah, sorry.
I can start sharing something so that you could just cancel your sharing, and then I'll stop sharing right after.
Okay.
All right, that should have stopped the sharing, I believe. Did it work?
So what are you gonna share?
No, I was trying to stop her from sharing the screen because it seemed like she was having some difficulty stop sharing the screen. So,
Oh, okay.
um, did we lose her though?
I don't know. It looks like we may have lost her too. I don't see her in participants anymore. So we may have to perhaps leave her for the end and move forward. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back and share my screen. All right, so I'll go ahead and share my screen, make sure. Has everybody seen my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so at this point, Gloria, why don't you go ahead and introduce our speaker today?
Yes, it is an honor to introduce to be Dr. Shivonne and Peters today. She's a marine scientist and PhD candidate with over 11 years of experience in the marine biology. And she's also working as a lecturer at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And you can see that she has an abundant amount of experience behind her that she has been building for more than a decade, including governmental positions that specialize in managing marine protected areas and sustainable development in the Caribbean. So we are very excited to hear her stories. Without further ado, Dr. Peters, please, we are excited to hear about the story of marine biodiversity of the Caribbean.
All right. Thank you so much, Gloria. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. Just give me a few seconds to share my screen with you. All right, and then slideshow and present your view. All right, so can you see my screen clearly?
Screen, yes. Yes.
Great. All right, so thank you again, everyone. My name is Shivonne Peters, and I'm a marine scientist, and I have been working in the marine sector in Trinidad and Tobago for the last 11 or 12 years now. So it's really my honor to talk to you today about marine biodiversity in the Caribbean. So just to give you a little quick outline of what we're going to talk about today, just give you a little background on my story. Then we're going to look at what exactly is marine biodiversity, and of course, why should we be interested in it? And then, of course, talking about biodiversity in my most favorite region, which is in the Caribbean. And then we're going to look at the links between biodiversity, culture, and the economy. Of course, we need to look at the threats to biodiversity, and we'll do that by looking at a couple of case studies. And then I want to end off the discussion today with a little chat with you about what your role could be in preserving the biodiversity wherever you are. And then we'll end with your questions and feedback. All right, so just to give you a little bit of background on my story, I actually started off becoming interested in the environment by looking at a lot of nature documentaries. This was like sort of a pastime that me and my dad would do. We would look at National Geographic, we'd look at Animal Planet, and I just sort of became fascinated about nature and specifically about the marine side of things. I developed a fascination for sharks early on in life. And because of that, I decided to study geography and environmental science at high school. And then at university, I went on to the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, Mona campus. And there I studied a bachelor's in geography. When I came back from Jamaica, I actually started teaching geography at my old high school. And at that point, I decided I wanted to further my studies again. So I went to the University College in London and I did a MSc in Environment and Sustainable Development. I was fortunate enough to land, I would say, my dream job when I came back from the UK as the Marine Park Manager for the Bucca Reef in Tobago. And I would have stayed in that position for 7 years. So during that time, which is sort of where my story changed. So, you know, you hear about people, you know, talking about you have all of this book experience, but you really don't have the practical experience doing physical things. So that was sort of my story. So when I started off as the Marine Park Manager, I actually could not dive or snorkel or even swim very well for that matter. So this is sort of where my career totally pivoted and took a drastic change. So it was because of the Bucca Reef Marine Park that I developed a really strong and genuine love for the marine environment. Yes, I was fortunate enough to land the job, but I didn't have the practical experience to be able to do the job fully. So not long after I took up the position, I decided to do another master's in ocean management at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And if I had to look back at one point in my journey so far, I would say this is where things sort of put me on the current path that I am on. And for me, being able to to snorkel, to scuba dive, to even drive a boat, is, one of those things that has really connected me to the marine environment. So I've gone on to do a lot of research in the marine environment. My PhD study is actually to develop a marine spatial plan for the Bucca Reef Marine Park, and I continue to do anything that is related to the water. A lot of my time now is spent doing projects with high school kids. We're trying to introduce more people in my community to the marine environment. And I think by doing that, we're going to create a whole new generation of environmental stewards and really get more people on board with this whole conservation drive. So in a nutshell, that is my story. So I want us to head into now the meat of the matter, which is to discuss marine biodiversity in the Caribbean. So what really is biodiversity? So if we were to break it down, and we broke it down into bio, that means life, and diversity means variability. So biodiversity, in essence, really refers to the variety of living species on Earth. And when we think about living species, we're not just thinking about animals, but we're also thinking about plants, we're also thinking about bacteria as well. So within a particular area, or a particular habitat, the biodiversity, of course, is going to vary. So we're really looking at the variety of species within particular areas or particular habitats. And it's important to know that when we're talking about biodiversity, we're also looking at both the terrestrial on land and the marine side of things. So if I were to, sort of talk about the different habitats that we may find, we're looking at things like mangrove forests, we're looking at things like coral reefs, grasslands, desert ecosystems, those sorts of habitats. And if we were to sort of quantify biodiversity, scientists have sort of estimated that there are about 8.7 million species of plants and animals, but only 1.2 million have been identified to date. So we have a lot more species to discover, and that is sort of the beauty of biodiversity. Yes, we know a lot of the organisms, but there's still so much to be discovered. So let's talk a little bit about biodiversity types. So when we're talking about biodiversity, we sort of break that down into three different types of diversity. So we're talking about genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. So the species diversity sort of refers to the different types of species found in a particular area, while the genetic diversity talks about the variations among the genetic resources of the different organisms. And ecological diversity refers to the variations in the plant and animal species that are living together and connected by food chains and food webs. And we're going to talk about the importance of, the food chains and the food webs, and of course, where we as humans fit into this whole biodiversity topic. So, we hear a lot about biodiversity. We live it and breathe it every day because we are part of the ecosystem. We are also part of the food web. But I want to spend a few minutes talking about why should biodiversity matter to us. Now, biodiversity matters because, think about it. We have all these different species of plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, and what these organisms do is that it sustains life on planet Earth. Without biodiversity, we would not even be here. But how exactly does the biodiversity sustain life on the planet? So in terms of the ecological stability, we know that every organism within the food web has an important role to play in the ecosystem. Not only that, but the ecosystem provides so many different services that we depend heavily on. What does the ecosystem provide for us? Well, things like energy generation, oxygen generation. It also has an important function in regulating the climate. And we know right now we're having serious challenges with respect to climate change. There's also the function of nutrient cycling, waste reduction, and disease control. And there's so many more ecosystem services that it provides for us. There's so many more that we just don't have enough time to list out everything. But now we understand what is marine biodiversity, and we understand why it's so significant for us. The last thing I want to mention with respect to this is that biodiversity around the world is under threat. All right, so we want to sort of transition now into the marine side of things, but I want to begin first by reminding all of us why the ocean is important. And I think we tend to overlook, the importance of the ocean resources. Yes, we know it's there and it's important, but it's always good for us to go back and remind ourselves exactly what functions the oceans provide for us. And we know that the oceans produce more than half of the world's oxygen, and it stores 50 times more carbon than the atmosphere. And of course, when we're talking about things like climate change, we know that without that function that the oceans provide for us, we're going to have a lot more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And of course, that's going to drive up the global temperature. So that is a very critical function of the oceans right now for us. And of course, the oceans also regulate the climate and weather patterns. What it does is to transport the heat from the equator to the poles. And of course, it facilitates transportation and trade, especially in the Caribbean. A lot of our food stuff is imported, and a lot of it comes in through marine transportation. And of course, the oceans also provide recreational activities for us, as well as tourism activities, especially when we're talking about small island developing states. We have a lot of islands that have their entire tourism sector based primarily on the marine environment. And of course, the oceans provide food for us in the form of fish, shellfish, and as ingredients in a lot of the products that we use. And also very important is that the ocean provides component for medicines, right? So in a nutshell, that is what or why the ocean resources are so important for us. So again, just to sum up, biodiversity really matters to us because, of course, it supports our economy. Species provide resources for the manufacture of food, medicine, and cosmetics. And the biodiversity also provides opportunities for tourism. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when I get to my case study, but just to let you know that, the tourism is also based heavily on the biodiversity. And of course, there is the ethical importance, all species do have a right to exist. So let's jump into my favorite area, the Caribbean. So we want to talk about marine biodiversity in the Caribbean. Now, the Caribbean is considered a hotspot for marine biodiversity, right? What does that mean? So the Caribbean actually contains the greatest concentration of marine species in the Atlantic. And it's just also considered a global scale hotspot for marine biodiversity. So it's not just important within our area here in the Caribbean, but it's also important on a global scale. And some of the specific habitats that the Caribbean is known for, it would be the mangrove forest, the coral reefs, of course, the seagrass beds, of course, the wonderful white sand beaches and salt marshes. So the ocean currents allow for species as well as the other influences like pollution to move very easily in, out of, and across marine ecosystems. So because of the currents that we have in the Caribbean, we tend to have a lot of similar species that are shared throughout a lot of the islands, but we also share common problems as well. So let's take a little bit of a closer look into the biodiversity in the Caribbean, right? So the Caribbean is considered to be a biologically unique yet highly threatened region. In terms of the species biodiversity, the Caribbean is known for over 11,000 species of plants and over 1,500 species of fish. Also very important is the endemic species that are just found within the Caribbean region, within specific islands of the Caribbean region. And not only endemic species, but also endangered species as well. Now, some of the threats that are faced within the Caribbean, of course, would be things like the overexploitation of the biological resources. And then we also have the impacts of agriculture. We also have a problem with invasive species, which we will talk about as we go a little further into the discussion. And then we also have the compounding effects of climate change and also development, especially when that development takes place along the coastal areas. So let's get into some of the threats facing the marine biodiversity in the Caribbean. Now, these images that you see here, 3 out of the 4 of them I actually took, and the first one shows turtles that were poached within a protected area in Trinidad and Tobago. And then we also see an image of seagrass.
Seems like we are frozen. Shivonne, let's see. Shivonne. We are not hearing you. Yeah, I'm sending she's not in the meeting, so she's probably gonna try and come back in here. So hold on a bit. Let me see if I have. Let's see if I have her number. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to reach it. Okay, here we go. She's rejoining us.
Hello.
Yes, so we lost you there for a few minutes. So hold on, let me get you back. Co-host as well as,
Yes, I just got cut off. I don't know what happened there.
yeah, neither do I, neither do us.
All right, let me see if I could find back where I stopped.
You should be able to upload again. And
Right, can
I
you see
think,
my screen?
yes, we could see your screen. I think this is where you,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. So okay.
Mhm.
Right, so we were talking about some of the threats to marine biodiversity in the Caribbean, and I want to start back off. So I'll just start over from the beginning. So one of the major threats that face Caribbean biodiversity is with respect to population growth and coastal development, and we know that in the Caribbean, the majority of the population lives in that coastal zone area. So of course, there's going to be development to facilitate things like housing, infrastructure, businesses, that sort of thing. But we really need to make our coastal development compatible with conservation. Another threat facing marine biodiversity is the threat of invasive alien species. And I think probably the best example of this would be the invasive lionfish that has spread from Florida all the way through the Caribbean. Actually, for us in Tobago, we were the last island to have sightings of the lionfish. And I think that would have happened in 2012 in Castaro. So from 2012 to now, we have been battling the lionfish. We have been trying to control the populations, and we have a number of different organizations within Trinidad and Tobago that have been, sort of at the forefront of this fight to control the invasive lionfish. Of course, we have threats like pollution and tourism, and we know that the pollution is primarily based from land-based sources. We have to consider things like our agriculture sector, what sort of inputs are going into the marine environment and causing harm for marine organisms there. Tourism as well. Now, because we depend heavily on tourism, we still cannot allow the tourism activities to interfere with our biodiversity. Because think about it, especially if you're visiting an island in the Caribbean, you want to go on a tour to do snorkeling or to do kayaking. So nature actually is what drives the tourism sector. So we have to be very careful that our tourism activities do not interfere with our marine biodiversity. And of course, the big one, climate change. Other threats also would be overfishing and unsustainable harvesting. So when you look at all of these threats, what we have seen in the Caribbean to date would be an 80% decline in coral cover. And we've also noticed that about 35% of our fish stocks are now overexploited. And then we've seen about a third of our mangroves within the Caribbean lost over the period of 1980 to 2010. So the threats are significant. And of course, we see very tangible results of the impact of these threats to our biodiversity here in the Caribbean. So there are a number of measures to protect the marine biodiversity in the Caribbean, but I just want to focus on one, my personal favorite, maybe a little biased, would be the use of or the establishment of marine protected areas. Now, what the marine protected area would do is that it would regulate the human activity that takes place within that particular area. And of course, it is a resource management tool. And it's important to note that for the marine protected area to be successful, it has to be designated through legal or regulatory means. So there would be an actual legislative framework that supports the establishment and the management of this particular space. So the marine protected area does allow for different activities to take place, but what it does is sort of zone these activities so that it can facilitate multiple activities, but only activities which are in line with the conservation goals, because the marine protected area is really designed to protect the marine resources of that particular area, and in some cases, the terrestrial resources as well. So there will be certain activities that are not allowed within the MPA. And some of the benefits of the marine protected area, of course, it maintains the biodiversity and provides refuges for endangered and commercial species. It also provides protection for critical habitats from the destructive fishing practices, and it allows certain ecosystems, it gives them a chance to recover. It also provides an area where the fish are able to reproduce, spawn, and grow to their adult size. So what I want to do now is to take you to a case study of a marine protected area in Trinidad and Tobago. So we're going to be looking at the Bucca Reef in Tobago. But before we do that, let's head over to Tobago. So, Tobago is located to the northeast of Trinidad, and Tobago really has a very, very long history of the protection of its natural resources. We have the Tobago Main Ridge Forest Reserve there, and that is actually the oldest marine reserve in the Western Hemisphere. It was designated since 1764. And of course, Tobago is also known for its diverse marine ecosystems. We have a number of internationally recognized scuba diving sites around the country. And we also have our more popular areas around Southwest Tobago, which is where the airport is located. And of course, that beautiful expanse of light blue is the Bucca Reef Marine Park. So let's get into our case study looking at marine biodiversity in the Bucca Reef Marine Park, Tobago. So the Bucca Reef Marine Park, now this is an area, of course, designated by law, and it covers an area of 7 square kilometers. Now, it was called the Bucca Reef Complex because it comprises of 3 different ecosystems within this area, which is what makes this area so very special and so very important. It has mangrove forests, seagrass beds, and coral reef ecosystems found within this red boundary that you see here. So the area is very, very rich in biodiversity. It's also one of the island's main tourist attractions. And of course, it has an ecological value as well as an economic value. All right, so in the Bucca Reef Marine Park, we also have other important areas within. So I just want to take you, give you a little visual tour of some of the other areas within the Bucca Reef Marine Park. This area is called the Pigeon Point Heritage Park, and this is also a popular tourist attraction with a wide range of amenities. All right, and this is sort of the area where we have a lot of the reef tours, the tours that go to the Bucca Reef to do snorkeling. This is where the tours, most of the tours leave from. Now, this particular area is also home to the Bonaccord mangrove forest, which is very, very extensive. It's probably the largest mangrove area in Tobago. And of course, it's also a very, very critical habitat as well for biodiversity. And as I started to talk about before, so the Pigeon Point, the mangroves at Pigeon Point that start at Pigeon Point extend into this area called the Bonaccord Lagoon. Now, this is the nursery for the Bucca Reef. And the Bonaccord Lagoon is actually a Ramsar site. So that means it is a wetland of international importance. And according to the latest study, Of course, this is the largest mangrove forest within the Caribbean. The mangrove here is predominantly Rhizopora mangle or red mangrove. And what makes this area so important is that the juvenile species of fish, well, after they are spawned in the Bonacord Lagoon, they spend a lot of time here growing to a particular size. So it's really a nursery and a safe haven for a lot of the commercial species of fish, reef fish as well. So this area really supports a number of sectors within Tobago. But this area is also used for a number of different activities as well. So it's also an area where a lot of boats or vessels would be anchored in instances of rough sea events. It's also an area that is known for fishing, even though, fishing is not permitted within this area. A lot of water sports activities also take place within the Bonacord Lagoon, the Sharebirds Point or No Man's Land area, and the Pigeon Point as well. Right, so I just mentioned No Man's Land. So this is really a sandy spit that is located at the entrance of the Bonacord Lagoon. And this is a very popular recreational area. And it's one of the locations that we have a lot of seabirds nesting. So this is a very, very popular area for tourism activities, but it also is a little biodiversity hotspot as well. They have a number of, different ecosystems and habitats and organisms that are here. We also have, in addition to the mangroves found in this area, we also have a lot of seagrass beds. All right, so let's talk about another critical component in terms of biodiversity is our coral reefs. So this is actually an aerial image of one of our main coral reef colonies or habitats within the Booker Reef. It's called Coral Gardens, and it has a number of different species of coral, which we'll talk about in the next slide. This area is also impacted by things like runoff from the land-based activities. It's also impacted by indiscriminate anchoring from some of the vessels. It also is impacted by things like coral bleaching as well, unfortunately, and also poaching. So while it's a rich area in terms of biodiversity, this area is also under threat. So within the Booker Reef, we would find between 11 to 14 hard coral species. We have the Orbicella faviolata, or the mountainous star coral. This is probably the most abundant species within the Booker Reef. We have the Colpophilia natans and the Pseudodiploria strigosa. We also have Acropora silviconis and Acropora palmata. So all of these species are found, hard coral species are found within the Booker Reef area. And we also have a number of soft corals or gorgonians also found within the Booker Reef Marine Park. But the biodiversity does not end there. We also have extensive seagrass communities that are found within our protected area. And we have Thalassia testinudum or turtle grass as the dominant species of seagrass found there. Now, the seagrass communities are actually a really important habitat for a number of different marine organisms, including conch, lobster, and fish. And of course, it has a very important function in terms of stabilizing the shoreline from the impacts of wave action. So it provides that function for us as well. So just quickly, I just want to point out a couple of other important features within the Booker Reef Marine Park in terms of biodiversity. We have the nylon pool, an area where we see a lot of turtles. We have the sandbar, which was an area that a lot of seabirds would rest on. We have the blue hole, which was it's a very deep area, and this area is actually not very well known. So I'm really hoping that somebody is going to do a lot more research so that we can really find out a little bit more about the blue hole in the Booker Reef. So let's talk about the threats to the biodiversity within the Boca Reef, our protected area here. So we have a lot of visitors. We have a lot of, traffic in and out of the area. So of course, that is a threat once that is not managed properly. We also have a lot of motorized crafts that use the area, and we have competition for space and resources. And we also have noticed coral decline, particularly over the last couple of decades. The coral decline is sort of more prevalent in the shallower areas, shallower locations. We have an overgrowth of macroalgae, coral disease, and coral bleaching. We actually had some coral bleaching taking place earlier this year as well. So yes, we have great biodiversity within this space, but it's important to know that yes, we are facing threats just like any other Caribbean island, and of course the fishing pressures as well. So what about the efforts to restore biodiversity? So I think this is one of the areas that really makes me hopeful that despite our threats, we're doing a lot to preserve the biodiversity within Tobago and within the Boca Reef as well. So we have a number of initiatives. This one is a coral garden that was established since 2016 to regrow some of the corals. So what this organization does, and this is ERIC, an organization known as ERIC in Charlottesville, they actually put coral fragments onto a mounted metal frame. And once the corals grow up to a certain size, they're then replanted or transplanted into their coral reefs in Charlottesville. So this project has been very successful. It's still ongoing. And what it's really doing is showing the potential for like a much larger scale coral reef restoration program. And of course, that is going to really help the coral reef biodiversity throughout the island. And then we also have more efforts in the pipeline. And this one is to establish a new marine protected area. So this is on the other side of Tobago now. So the Boca Reef is on southwest Tobago, and this will be the northeast part of the island. So of course, when we're talking about restoring biodiversity and we're talking about establishing a marine protected area, we already know that this is going to have tremendous positive impacts on the biodiversity of this particular space. And what is very important to note here is that this marine protected area is going to allow a number of different types of activities. So we're going to have a situation where we're going to be able to balance the tourism and economic side of things as well as the biodiversity side of things. And again, important to note is that this particular effort is going to encourage the local communities to become part of the conservation activities. And then, of course, we have the Institute of Marine Affairs, which is our main marine institution in Trinidad and Tobago. They just recently completed the Marine project, which was this was the pilot part of the program, and it was really to look at strategies for corals and seagrass in terms of regrowing them. So this project, I think, is ready to go on to the second phase now that the pilot has been done and successfully completed. So these are some of the things that I look forward to seeing happen within the next few months in Tobago. And of course, seeing the positive impacts, because of course the scientists are going to go in and study and determine how successful their efforts will be in the next few years. So now that we've talked about Tobago, and of course I may be a little bit biased, so yes, I spent a great deal of time talking about biodiversity in Tobago, I want to talk about two more case studies very briefly. The first one is Dominica, and of course I know you're all environmental students and geography students, so you probably would have already heard the news that Dominica has plans to establish this whale sanctuary for a group of over 300 sperm whales. I think this is, this is the kind of development that we want to see in the Caribbean. We want to see countries really going and make those bold steps to protect their biodiversity. So in Dominica, they realized that, these sperm whales were facing a number of threats. They were getting tangled in fishing gear. They also faced impacts because of pollution and also due to tourism, because yes, whale watching is a popular tourism attraction in Dominica. But what the scientists realized was that if the boats get too close to the whales, they could actually disrupt their feeding patterns. So the government decided to establish the world's first marine protected area for sperm whales, and this is going to cover a very, very extensive area, over 800 square kilometers. So this also has the added function, not only is it going to protect biodiversity in Dominica, but it's also going to help the fight with respect to the climate crisis. So interesting story. So these sperm whales, they actually poop near to the surface of the water. And as a result of that, the nutrient-rich waters remain along the ocean surface and creates plankton blooms. And once there's a plankton bloom, carbon dioxide is actually captured and dragged into the ocean. So this is how the sperm whales actually help fight the climate crisis. All right. So this is just one example of a very, very recent but very noteworthy initiative to restore biodiversity in Dominica. And then the last one I want to talk about is in Antigua. I was fortunate to do some work with a local NGO in Antigua last year. And this is the island of Redonda. So Redonda is now known as a restoration role model. So imagine having a sort of a barren wasteland, an island that was full of invasive species like rats and feral goats. And then this area now becoming totally transformed into a pristine habitat. So within 5 years of this program starting, and this was the efforts to restore Redonda, the group was able to have 15 species of land birds return to the island. The numbers of the Redonda ground lizard, which is an endemic species, it actually increased 13-fold. The native trees and grasses would have been regrown in the island. And the seabirds, like the brown boobies and the red-billed tropic birds, actually came back to this island. So this is another example of, efforts to really restore biodiversity within the Caribbean. And this particular site has now been granted protected area status. So it went from a wasteland to now a protected area in Antigua and Barbuda. So this was, I thought this was a really great example for us to showcase today, because it really shows how extensive, conservation efforts can be and how effective they are as well. So now that we've seen the case studies, I want to talk lastly about what can you do to protect our coastal and ocean resources. So for you, you could definitely become an environmental steward, as the next generation of people who are really going to be on the forefront of fighting the climate crisis and protecting our resources. I think it's really important to develop that sense of, okay, this is also my problem and I need to be part of this solution. You could also talk to your classmates about the importance of marine protected areas, the importance of biodiversity in the Caribbean. And of course, you can develop a little project to, reduce waste, to protect any particular species. These are things that you can do as a group. And of course, keeping your immediate environment clean, that is also an excellent way to protect the coastal and coastal resources, because we know whatever happens on land affects the marine life as well. You could also join an environmental youth group. You could become a volunteer. You can join a group that shares, similar interests in terms of protecting the environment. And of course, we talked about the school project. And again, reduce, reuse, recycle, and repurpose plastics and other products that may be harmful if they enter into the environment. And of course, finally, become a volunteer, as I mentioned before. So I just want to end by saying everybody can do their part in protecting the biodiversity, whether you live in the Caribbean, whether you live in the States or in the UK, wherever you are, you have a role to play. So I just want to end off the presentation today by encouraging you to see how you can contribute to the solution. All right, so thank you very much. Any questions or comments that you may have?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so very much. My co-host has to leave, Gloria, but we want to thank her too for being part of this. Yeah, this was brilliant. This was powerful. This was a very clearly presented talk. And I have questions, but I'll have others join in and ask their questions or make their comments at this time. So
Sure.
people could unmute, you could unmute and speak up with your comments and or questions.
Hi, this is Laurel Berman. I'm wondering if there is, feel free to, I can put my email in the chat or send it to Desmond, suggest things that Andrews air and water quality students can do. We tend to do an advocacy assignment. Last year, the year before, we looked at the issues of open defecation in other countries and building composting latrines. But I would love to expand by giving students an assignment, and they could actually send it to you, like a group assignment. We can also do this an intro to environmental quality.
Okay, so I guess that's directed to Shivonne.
Shivonne, yes.
Shivonne,
Sure.
what do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, this is the kind of partnerships that we're looking for. So any way that I can help, I'm absolutely more than willing to.
So I could get you both connected and you guys could take it from there.
Yes.
Great.
All right. Very good, very good. Other questions or comments? Again, you could unmute. Go ahead.
I have a question. So I came on kind of late, but I'm actually from Tobago. I wanted to find out, I don't know if I missed it, but the reason for the coral reef, what declining, if it's different what I hear locally. Could you just repeat that part of it?
So the reasons for the coral reef decline are pretty diverse. You have things like climate change, and you also have the, pollution from on land that's causing impacts within the ocean. You also have the impacts of the tourism sector as well that are causing declines in the coral reef. But I'm interested to hear what was the local response in terms of, what they have identified as the causes.
Well, so what I've heard is the impact of the hotels on the beaches, because
pollution,
and throughout the island, I am currently living in Texas, and what I have noticed in my line of work, I'm in the environmental business, and we treat drinking water and wastewater before basically a reclamation process. And what I have noticed growing up home and now living here is what we do with our wastewater. And it seems like that's where most of the pollution is coming from.
Yes.
We really don't treat our wastewater. I know
Properly.
most people have what you call those things again?
A soak away, a septic tank.
Soak away, yes. Yeah. But the water from the house, from the homes, if eventually goes to the sea.
Correct. Yes.
So with the planting of the corals in the in the thing, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But will that fix the main problem in terms of what are we going to turn to do with our wastewater from the sinks, especially? I think from the brown water, that's fine. But
Yeah.
the water from the kitchen sink and the bathroom still goes to the ocean through the ravines and stuff.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
So I'm asking is, will the transplanting of the corals, will it really help, because we'll be in the same boat? It seems like there has to be more engineering
Yeah.
solutions.
Yeah, and I mean, this is an excellent question and a good point for us to discuss, because one of the things that we were looking at was, this whole holistic ridge to reef sort of approach, because we can't just be, doing things like the transplanting of the corals or regrowing the corals, and we're not dealing with the root problem that's causing the decline. So I know the wastewater company, they have done a lot of work in the last 3 to 4 years in terms of managing the wastewater. They've put in a lot more wastewater treatment facilities within Southwest Tobago. Of course, that is the area that is, densely populated with hotels and guest accommodations. So I think the idea was really to get that Southwest area water quality under control, and then expand it to other parts of Tobago. But I can't really speak for, how effective it will be. We know that it's going to be effective in terms of regrowing the corals, but we definitely have to pay a lot more attention to the land-based sources of pollution and how we could control that. But I definitely know that in terms of, further development, it is definitely very high on the priority list for a lot of the state agencies that have direct responsibility for this area.
Very good, very
All right,
good,
thank you.
very
You're
good.
welcome.
Anybody else has questions or comments? So one general question I have, I'm aware that, the connection between marine biodiversity and climate change is, has to be a long-term type study.
Yes.
Have you any sort of indications about how climate change is affecting marine biodiversity in the Caribbean?
We don't. My study on the Book Reef has not been that extensive to look at the impacts of climate change. But what I do know is that we're actually seeing a lot more coral bleaching specifically happening. I think this year, the bleaching was not as bad as previous years. I think in 2010 we had a very, very significant coral bleaching that resulted in a high mortality rate. But we are seeing the tangible signs of the impacts of climate change, but I'm not too sure if anyone has actually quantified it as yet. But definitely that would be a good study for some students, maybe from the local university here to do, because it's very important for us to know how significant this, the climate change is impacting our coral reefs, and not just the coral reefs as well, but, the other habitats that we depend so heavily upon.
So bleaching would, as a first approximation, would assume that there is changes in the temperature and maybe the acidity.
Yes, the temperature specifically.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So once the oceans are warmer, the corals will then expel these zooxanthellae within their cells, and they can no longer make food, so they turn white.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments you guys may have? Another question is about, you talked about the lionfish. Could you tell us a little bit more about the efforts to manage it? What is
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So what we have happening here in Tobago, we have lionfish derbies. So it's essentially a hunt where we have experienced divers go out, and it's a competition to see who can catch the most lionfish, who can catch the largest size lionfish, so the different, categories of prizes. And what that has done is sort of, mobilize those people that are already in the marine sector to, do their part to remove the lionfish. Another thing that we're doing here as well is now lionfish is one of the main dishes at hotels, at restaurants.
Okay.
So the hotels have now partnered with like spear fishermen to actually buy the lionfish catch. So it's, it's sort of, adding to the economy as well. The fisherman can make a profit. We could get the lionfish removed. And then, restaurateurs can actually serve this new delicacy on their menu. So it works out in so
Okay,
many ways.
okay. Do we have a sense of like the food cycle for the lionfish? What does it feed on and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so the lionfish feeds on anything that can fit in its mouth, basically.
Okay.
So all of the juvenile species of reef fish, crustaceans, literally anything that it can swallow, it's going to eat, and it has a very voracious appetite. So it's not just going to eat 2 fish every few days. It's going to continue to eat a lot, which is why it's so dangerous for us to have the lionfish on our coral reefs.
Yeah, yeah. I see a hand. Richard, you could unmute.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification for Shivonne.
Yes.
She mentioned the wastewater companies in Southwest Tobago, and I was just curious, is that WASA or those private
Correct.
companies?
No, so it's WASA. They would have done a lot of work over the last few years. A lot of new wastewater treatment facilities have been put in to sort of manage wastewater in Southwest Tobago. I think it's called the Southwest Tobago Wastewater Treatment Project.
Okay. And there are no private wastewater treatment plants?
None that I know of, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Again, any other questions, comments? All right. So again, want to thank you, Shivonne. We wish you all the best in your continued research, in your education. When do you think you would complete your dissertation and stuff?
It's due for completion at the end of this month, actually.
Oh, okay.
Fingers crossed. All the fingers crossed.
Okay, Doc.
Not just yet. Not just yet.
Well, we believe in faith.
Yes.
That it will happen. Yes.
Thank you.
So before we all leave, I just wanted to show something here really quick. I will show this. Again, is everyone seeing my screen? Is everyone seeing my screen? Yes, no? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So next semester, next season, season 6, our very first episode would be by Kimberly Guerrero, and she is a movie and television actress. And she's also a professor at the University of California, Riverside. She was featured on Seinfeld as Jerry's girlfriend. If you go back and look at that episode, you'll see her there. She also has been featured in Reservation Dogs, The English, Spirit Rangers, some really cool movies. And so she will be talking to us about the environment in Native American themed movies. That would be a very interesting presentation, and we hope that you could start spreading the word about this. This will be our very first presentation, January the 12th. To put that down into your calendar, we'll be hearing from Kimberly Guerrero. And so that's the end of Environmental Fridays for today and for this semester. We want to thank everyone who's been a part of it, as an audience, as a participant, co-host, speakers. Especially want to thank our final speaker here today for very informative, very understandable, clear presentation. Thank you so much again, Shivonne, and all the best. And hope everyone has a wonderful upcoming holiday season. Happy Christmas and happy holidays. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone, and thanks again.
Thank you.
By the way, I can't find the link to the rest of the.
Well, yes, I'll work on getting those sent and set up over this break.
Great, thank you, because there are one or two I missed and would really like to listen to or watch.
All right, sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Right, and thank you very much again. Bye for now.
Okay, bye-bye.